Hey, Jonathan, how are you?
Good, Dave. How are you?
Too bad?
Sorry?
Is it not too bad?
Not too bad. Sorry, my dogs are fighting in the background, so if you hear growling, it's not the kids, it's the dogs.
Hey, Ryan, I'm going to do it live on YouTube so that the reporter can access it quicker tomorrow.
Okay, so that'll record it.
Yeah, it records it, so she'll be able to, so if she goes to the town's YouTube page tomorrow, it'll be up there.
Okay, thanks.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello. Hey, Matt. Hey, Dave. Did you want to just leave the candidates in the meeting just now, and then that way we don't have to worry about promoting them later. I see Joe's in.
Yeah, I invited them all as panelists, so
Yeah.
they should be coming through that link. So
Okay.
they'll be joining us over the course of the next half hour.
And I did notice also, Dave, that this is set up as a special meeting, so we won't be able to open the agenda.
Yeah, I think that's just because of the time difference.
Yeah, that's fine. Can we talk about the Light Up Madison in old business or new business, or?
I would think I would talk about it under old business as we
Okay.
did initiate the conversation before.
Yeah, that's fine. I just going to talk about finding time next week for a special meeting because we still have
Okay.
the information yet.
I canceled my planning and zoning commission meeting next week, so if it needs to be Thursday night, I can do that.
Okay, I was thinking maybe Tuesday. I can't imagine it would take more than 20 minutes, hopefully, but
Depending on the time, I have another meeting on Tuesday and
All right.
Wednesday.
okay, figure it out.
Hey, John Michael, how are you?
Hey, how you doing, Dave?
I texted with Noreen earlier and she said she was going to jump on about quarter off.
Yeah, I per your text, I did send her a text, and she said her power came back. So
Okay.
I didn't realize you lost your power. I'm sorry to hear that.
all right, we'll give. So I believe Mark Steffen is not able to attend tonight, but I think with Ann now we have a quorum. Get started. Hi, Ann.
Hi. Hello, everyone.
Hey, Ann, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Good.
And
Miss Lisa.
Hey, Lisa.
Guys,
hey, Lisa.
Lisa.
All right, I think we have everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. This is a special meeting due to the time change. So we'll stick to the agenda for the first part. As we talked about last month, we're going to spend the first 30 minutes of tonight going through our regular business for the evening. And then we'll spend from 7 to 8 communicating some of our priorities to the candidates for state office and hearing a little bit from them as well. So pretty excited for the evening, and thank you. I see John Michael, Joe, I see Christine's logged in, and I know Noreen will be joining us as well. So thank you so much for taking your time out of a Thursday evening to share a little bit with us. I'm sorry we can't be in person. kind of gotten used to this a little bit, which I don't know, maybe there'll be a role for the ability to do some remote meetings in the future, so that if any of you are up in Hartford, there won't be any more excuses not to drop into an EDC meeting. So we'll start with the approval of the minutes from the September 10th meeting. I know, I think I submitted one change to you, Terry. I don't know if, and that was the change of John Matthews to John Mathers in the minutes. Were there any other changes?
I incorporated whatever changes you told me in the one that they're approving now.
Okay, great, thank you.
I didn't have anything. It was fine with me.
Thanks, can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. One item that's just that's left over, but Dave, correct me if did we talk about this last month? Had it already been approved last month when we, or was it about to?
To be honest, I don't remember the timing, the tax incentive policy.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't remember the meeting that I went to for the Board of Selectmen, but it was approved unanimously without much further discussion than I think you had, Ryan, when you attended. When we did also talk about the kind of ongoing issue of not being able to hold town meetings to actually execute any of the incentive awards, should someone, submit a formal application. And so that's still an outstanding issue, has not been resolved yet.
okay, great. Well, good to know that that was approved. I know it's something that the group worked on quite a bit, so that's good news. Bruce is visiting his parents up in Maine tonight, and he won't be joining us, but I see we have Justin here. Justin, any news or updates out of Board of Finance?
Nothing really meaningful. We're getting into obviously the budget and the CIP, capital improvement programs this fall, so getting back into the meat of it in the coming months. I guess on a positive note, I think it was after your last meeting, you all recall or might know about the tax due date, deferral or postponement of the property tax due date for Madison being pushed out till October 1. And so at our September meeting, Stacy did report that the receipts to date were obviously not 100%, but actually tracking better than she had forecast. I think the number was about close to 50% people had paid their taxes already, prior to that extended deadline. So that was positive. And obviously at the October meeting, we'll have an update, hopefully close to 100%. But actually, I guess the takeaway is, better than more than she had expected. And, many people just went ahead and paid either on time, or obviously people through escrow would have been paying on time anyway. So good news there, that despite all the uncertainty out there, the revenue is still coming in as expected, or and certainly as hoped. That's
awesome. That's good news. Regarding the CIP, I know that one item that might be discussed is the Madison Center project. That's something that the EDC has had a proud history in being involved with. So as you move through that process, Justin, especially the CIP in regards to the center project, we would love to be involved or help to participate in any way.
Okay. I'll admit I need to get up to speed on it. It looks, you could probably tell me, I think it looks great, and it looks largely finished to my eye. I know the pole removal is still hanging out there, and they're still doing like the little divider island over at the corner opposite the library. So I'll admit I'm not fully versed on what remains to be done. I've gotten a couple of emails, or the boards have gotten a couple of emails from Gus or Horvath telling us what remains to be done.
Sure. Yeah, we'll share with you, there is a link on the town website that provides kind of a historical look at the project. There is a a presentation that was made at a public information session that gives a really good overview of the different steps. Believe it or not, it backs all the way up 20 years now. So it's a project that's been going on for a long time, and be happy to talk about that. One thing too, just historically speaking, it was never really part of a capital plan because it was the original intention that the project be funded by grants, not
Right.
Madison taxpayers. If the winds have changed on that thinking, we should approach it from, perhaps from a different way of thinking to determine how much of it we want to be Madison taxpayer subsidized, because they're grants, so they're ultimately still taxpayer subsidized in most cases.
Right.
But definitely an interesting way to approach it. One of the reasons it was delayed, quite honestly, was we ran out of grant funding.
Okay.
That's great. Dave, any fun things coming out of planning and zoning?
Nothing necessarily fun, but we did have a pretty robust discussion about affordable housing at our last Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. And all towns in Connecticut are required to prepare an affordable housing plan by, I believe the date is June 27th, 2021, which, a little over a year and a half away. And so the town has had some initial discussions about putting together a committee, representatives of various boards, potentially someone from this board, definitely someone from Planning and Zoning, the Senior Commission, Youth and Family Services, perhaps the first select woman, and then some citizen members to help prepare the plan for the town. And the charge of the plan is really to increase the amount of affordable housing in town. It's not very prescriptive beyond that. There's not a percentage target that we're required to try to achieve in the plan, but it's just to increase it. So I think that would be a pretty good effort that the Planning and Zoning Commission will participate in. And so we're a little bit focused on that at the moment. And we actually do not have a meeting next week. We don't have any applications, although there's several in the queue. So hopefully over the next coming months, there'll be some more projects that I'll be able to share with the board.
Just touching on projects in the queue, I know I had been asked recently, just the two bookend marina projects that we talked about at length last year. What is there any movement on either of those? Are there properties for sale at this point?
So 4 Boston Post Road, which is on the Guilford side of town, is for sale. The property owner had hoped to find a development partner to participate in that project with his family. They haven't been able to find one yet, so they put the property on the market. They're still exploring potentially moving forward with it on their own, but they're also exploring selling it. The other project is still for sale. And I actually got a call this afternoon from George from Indian River Shellfish, who operates down there, that there was a bunch of people walking around the project today, developers that are very interested in pursuing that. And I've had some preliminary conversations with them, but I'm not sure if they're actually at a point where they're, have expressed, interest in acquiring it, or if they're just exploring it. So I think the interest seems to be more in the Clinton side of town, that marina project, but time will tell.
And in regards to some of the attrition that's happening in the commercial district, I did notice this week that the Perfect Parties, Elizabeth's Cafe business seems to have shut down at this point.
Yeah, I was notified about that as well. And I think if you recall that actually building and business was for sale a few years ago. So it's not completely exclusively related to COVID. I think there was an interest in, transitioning away from that business in the past.
Yeah.
And I have not heard from anyone that might be interested in purchasing that yet, but I'm hopeful that we will get some interest.
So that is, it's obviously approved as a restaurant.
Correct. Yep.
So, and those properties are, or historically have been sought after. I don't know if in today's climate that remains true,
Right.
but
Yeah, it's a difficult time for sure. There's still a lot of things up in the air. So
the other thing, and I know I mentioned to you, Dave, that it appears, again, this is just from my own being nosy, poking around downtown, that the Morgan Stanley office has moved out of the building. Do you know I don't remember the address there, Dave.
I can't remember either.
Next to the theater building,
Correct.
a couple doors down to the west.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if you've had any additional information on that. I haven't had an opportunity to reach out to the building owners.
I do not have any information currently, no.
I'll have some secondhand info. But I think it's reliable. Being nosy as well, Ryan. But they had a water burst. They didn't move out. They're moved out temporarily. The building had to be almost completely gutted because they had a water leak on the upper floor that damaged all the Morgan Stanley space. And that's from a Morgan Stanley broker. So it's not that they've left. They're just out of there temporarily while they rebuilt the space.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah. So apparently there was a lot of water damage. So it was basically left for like a weekend before it was found. So they almost had to gut it down to the core.
Right.
But they will be going back when it's finished.
Any other notes of interest, either Dave or anyone in the group that's heard things that we should be aware of or try and help out with if there's somebody that's teetering on wanting to move or close?
I don't have anything additional, no.
Great. Well, just moving on to old business. We had talked about last month this opportunity that originally came up from John Mathers at the Beach Hotel, who's also the president-elect of the Chamber of Commerce, about some sort of spectacular or light up Madison event. And we've put together rather quickly, and thanks Dave and Rita at the town, to put together kind of a quasi RFP to encourage proposals. We've sent that out. Dave and John Mathers and I met with a couple of interested parties on Tuesday downtown to walk through. And we've received at least one proposal to kind of light up Madison. I think because we had to end up extending the deadline to today. So I don't think we're ready to review the proposals at this point. And what I'm hoping to do is schedule a special meeting for next week. It'll be brief. And what I'm hoping that we at least have a couple to look at. And what I would like is to have kind of this ad hoc committee, which kind of has been brainstorming about this, which is John Mathers, Dave Anderson, Lisa Mixis, and Eileen Banish, to kind of go through what we've received and summarize it. We'll provide everything that we've received out to everybody, of course, if you want to spend your time. I know the one that we received today was a little lengthy, but we'll summarize that and hopefully have some sort of recommendation for the special meeting. I remain really excited about what this opportunity could do for downtown Madison during November through January. I think it has the opportunity to bring a lot of light and hope and cheer to the dark months in our commercial district. And I'm hopeful that other merchants and organizations will kind of tag on to the effort. So I don't know, Dave or Lisa, I don't know if you have anything else that we should kind of mention about the process so far. I mean, we moved quickly through it.
I guess the only thing I'd mention is there was, we purposely kept it a little open-ended to try to solicit some creative proposals in the beginning. And that, I think, not caused any confusion, but I think folks were a little bit uncertain of exactly what we were looking for. So Ryan sent out a subsequent email to extend the deadline to kind of further refine what we were asking for. And since that time, we have had a little bit more interest in again, we've received a concrete proposal today, and hopefully we will get a couple others. So I think, but everybody, when we talk about it, and I've seen a few different email communications, people very enthused about the idea. So it's definitely something I think we should continue to work hard on trying to pull off.
Yeah.
Will the proposals come to the EDC for us to look at, or will it be the
Yes.
subgroup making the decision and then it comes to us?
No, what I'm hoping to do, Jonathan, is we'll put them all in a package. There may be one, but whatever we have, we will put in a package in addition to the original proposal, is attach a summary, which will hopefully provide some additional context to any conversations we've had with the vendor. For example, the proposal that we've received, the woman actually did come at the kind of the walkthrough that we hosted, so we can provide some additional contextual information on her and her business. So no, we'll provide everything out, and I'll try and do that I'll try and get it all by Monday, and I'm thinking, and I'll have to work with Dave on the special meeting time, but we'll figure out someday next week to do that for 15 minutes. And if you can just call in to do that, you certainly don't need to get all set up and fancy, for that meeting. You should certainly just call in. I think that's acceptable, right, Dave?
Yes.
Do we seem like we're all set up and fancy?
You look how nice you look.
Oh, well,
Leonard
yeah.
Yeah.
That's, if you knew me better, Ryan, you'd know that's what I always wear.
well, John Michael gets the prize though. He's got a tie.
Yeah, he's always sporting the good look.
Yeah. So we'll get those out, but I also hope that maybe this will kind of act as to spur people's imagination on other things like this that maybe we could help to kind of move along. So if it doesn't have to be money or downtown related, but I do think during this period of time where there's a bit of uncertainty that remains in our lives, if there are short-term items or short-term initiatives that we can take on as the EDC, brainstorm and think about it, and let's talk about it. And especially if it's something that we have a little bit more time to wrap our arms around. This one, kind of bubbled up quickly, and I'm happy that we're able to try and make it work. I would have liked if we had a little bit more time, but so if there's things you're thinking of or ideas that you want to talk about, bring them forward right now. Nothing. Or next month. Does anyone have any other new business? Or I guess old business. We haven't gotten to new business yet.
Hey, Ryan, just a quick question. Have you heard any updates with Tweed?
Well, I did email with Sean Scanlon a couple of weeks ago, and he had indicated that he did not believe that American Airlines would return from their suspended schedule, which was October, unless there was another government stimulus package. Then it was announced a few days ago that that American was likely to return in November because the outlook for a government stimulus looked good. That has changed again. So I didn't hear anything additional from American or from Sean. So I don't know if their return is still scheduled for November, or if it's still in limbo based on the stimulus. It was all, Sean alluded that there may also be other opportunities though in the near future. I know when we invited him to this meeting back, I think it was maybe in March or in April, he also indicated that there were some talks ongoing with other airlines. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that does materialize. Any other old business? Any new business? Great. Hi, Noreen.
Hello, how are you? Hello, everybody.
Hello.
So I know we're running a few minutes ahead, which is good news. Give us more opportunity to share some of our priorities and to hear from some of the candidates. I wanted to check though, just to make sure. I know that Joe and Christine are logged in, but I want to make sure you're not still having dinner or feeding the kids. Or Joe, I see you, Christine. You guys are
I'm here.
right in the wings. Excellent. Great. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, or us.
So this year is a little bit different. I know Christine and Noreen and John Michael, you joined us 2 years ago to talk about economic development and your priorities. And we shared a little bit about some of our priorities, but we thought that this year, especially given the fact that it's a virtual setting, which sometimes makes conversation a little bit more challenging, we thought that we'd provide a little bit more structure around what it is that we want to talk about and the questions that we wanted to ask you. So I wanted to thank Jonathan Stein, who's one of our commission members and here tonight. He's dressed up almost as nice as John Michael, and Lisa Mixis, and Mark Steffen, who's not able to join us tonight. They put together the information that I sent out to you last week with the EDC's priorities, which was just a nice and easy bulleted list, as well as a link to our action plan, which Advanced CT, formerly known as CERC, produced for us last year, as well as 3 questions that we want to open up to the 3 of you in a few minutes. I thought that we could start by just kind of covering the bullet points of our priorities. We went through a process with CERC last year that included interviews with the commission, interviews with other elected officials and appointed officials in town, as well as focus groups with people from the Chamber of Commerce and the business community to help to identify the things that are most important to the success and sustainability of Madison. And these priorities generally continue to ring true, despite being a year old, and maybe even more importantly, despite being on the other side of the pandemic. So we kind of gave them a little bit of a refresh, but we also included the link to the action plan that CERC produced for us at the time. And we hope that you've had kind of an opportunity to take a look at it. It's not too lengthy. But I wanted to kind of review the current priorities and actually hope that maybe other commission members might talk a little bit about each one of these points. And I'm going to pick on Eric for the first one here because we made an important addition to this. It's only a 5-character addition, but it's really important. I included the plus sign in the arts there. And that's to encourage a vibrant community, which is inclusive of culture and arts. And we in Madison are so fortunate to have a vibrant bookstore, a nationally renowned bookstore, as well as an art cinema that makes our town very unique. And we know that that adds the vibrancy, but we want to ensure that we continue to provide other businesses to help sustain those entities and to increase the culture and the arts in town. And so, Eric, I don't know. I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but I was hopeful that maybe you could add a little bit of additional context behind that.
Well, I think we as a group were concerned about losing the movie theater some months ago, and we were worried about the economic impact of that on the town, and it made us think about how unique Madison is because of that movie theater, and should we continue to invest in encouraging businesses that are unique, that are economic drivers for the town. So I think that kind of, in my estimation, it sums up all of the special part of downtown Madison in one fell swoop in terms of arts and culture and what it can do for the community. So we just want to make sure that that's on the plate for today. Is that what you were looking for, Ryan?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we're fortunate on this commission to have probably one of the leading experts in the importance of arts in Connecticut. So we're lucky to have you, Eric, along with the commission. And I think that, we can't really stress that enough, that the vibrancy is so important to our community. And I think about that from an economic development perspective and the importance of having small businesses and retailers and restaurants and movie theaters. But that adds to the overall kind of energy that we see, that I think we've probably, at least I have become even more appreciative of during times of shelter in place and quarantine. So one that may not be quite as exciting as culture and arts is shared wastewater in our commercial district. And I'm sorry that Mark Steffen isn't able to join us tonight, because he especially is passionate about this issue. Surprisingly, when I first joined EDC, I took a look at wastewater in Madison, and this issue, believe it or not, has been discussed since like the 1950s. And still we know it's an important issue. Dave, putting you on the spot now, where does this stand right now?
So there's a town entity, the Water Pollution Control Authority, the WPCA, and they're really charged with wastewater management for the town. And so part of this lies within their wheelhouse in terms of just, wastewater, the technical issue of wastewater. And then part of the issue lies with EDC and certainly the Board of Selectmen in terms of trying to create a vibrant community. So the WPCA actually have a meeting scheduled for next week. They've asked for funding in the past to do a more comprehensive wastewater study, which would include the downtown. And they've been talking to the selectmen about that a little bit. They've talked to the Coastal Resiliency Commission a little bit about it. And I think certainly there's opportunities to talk to the Economic Development Commission about any opportunities to work together on something like that. So it has been talked about for a long time. So I don't want to speculate as to when it might get off the ground, but it seems as if there is a little bit of a momentum behind it at this point in time to actually try to figure out what some feasible solutions are. So I'm hoping
it's certainly something that that our state legislators can help to facilitate, because I know that as we've looked at wastewater and the different opportunities we have to address it, many of them include kind of structures that are dependent on state statute. And also, I would imagine we would benefit from potential grant funding for some of this. So that remains one of our priority issues, and hopeful that it happens sometime, maybe in the next 50 years would be nice. The kind of the third priority, it sounds perhaps not as complex, and maybe it isn't as complex as wastewater, and that's promoting our existing businesses. And you know, we do have a responsibility as the Economic Development Commission to not only look at ways to continue to grow our grand list to ensure we have a sustainable town government. But one of the ways to do that is to ensure that our existing businesses are satisfied and are succeeding. So that is a priority. Visiting our existing businesses, I think, fits into that. And I know Dave and I, pre-pandemic, had visited several businesses that were going through growing pains and needed help being connected to different resources. Out of that process actually came our tax, I guess, deferral program, which is one of the last bullets here. We'll talk about in a moment. So really good things can come from that. Also, several of the commission members, including myself, actually took the opportunity on May 20th, which was the reopening day in Connecticut during COVID, to visit a bunch of businesses that had just opened up their doors after being shut. And from my perspective, they were happy that someone from EDC was coming out to say hello. And I know our first select woman also participated in that outreach program. I think some of the members here did as well. Dave, do you want to touch upon our desire to continue to assist entrepreneurs and home-based businesses?
Yeah, sure. Well, you know, one of the things that we talk about routinely is that we do have a limited commercial base in town in terms of economic development growth. But one of the things I think that we do have a plethora of is folks either, you know, working from home for larger corporations that are scattered throughout the state, or folks that are entrepreneurial in nature and working, you know, for themselves or with small groups that growing businesses, you know, in town. And so we've talked about how to tap into that group in a little bit more, I guess, direct fashion. So that's something I think that we haven't made a lot of strides in yet, but we definitely think is a priority, and we'd like to start making a little bit more progress in that arena, because I think we have maybe a little bit of a competitive advantage from some of our neighboring towns with the talent pool really that lives here in Madison.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah.
I'll also say, just as an aside, I think we're fortunate that there are a lot of those folks that volunteer for our boards and commissions too. And so I think, you know, we already have a little bit of a network that we can tap into, and I think we can grow that relatively easily with a little bit of, you know, strategic decision making. So.
We also have talked about highlighting some of our strong industries. I use that word, probably should put that in quotes, industries. I'm certainly not an industrial community. But it is something that we want to ensure that we not only are highlighting the strong industries and businesses in town, but also those areas within town that are thriving. I think we saw kind of a renaissance on Wall Street, for example, that attracted businesses that were hiring 25, 50 professionals in software and marketing, graphic design. And so I think we do want to take the opportunity to continue to highlight those when the timing is right. You know, certainly the growth that we've seen on Wall Street has certainly grown our grand list and helped to make our town more sustainable financially, but also added to the vibrancy of our downtown and those that visit our restaurants and shops. State and federal coordination of resources. So this is a topic that I think is certainly appropriate for highlighting this evening. Dave, I'm going to pick on you again to talk about perhaps we
Just
can.
to be clear, I'm not running for any office. So.
Well, not yet. I don't. Not yet. Not this time. You got to wear a tie before.
I know. I have to clean up a little bit.
But I think that Dave, maybe we can talk about, and Christine will remember kind of the conversation that we had with Deep last year in regards to some property, state-owned property in town, and kind of the opportunity that provided for us to open up some communication channels. And I think that those channels remain important.
Yeah, so I had a conversation with Christine about that, and you, Ryan, and I do think the partnership with DEP is really important, especially considering the location of Hammonasset State Park within the town of Madison, and there is some excess land that's not part of the core area of the park that does have some economic development potential that's located in our commercial district. So those conversations, I think, are really valuable. There's also just other partnership opportunities. I think now that we've seen the Passport to the Park program in operation, there is a considerable, turnover of visitors to the park. So before, where folks would go in and spend the entire day there and kind of just go back on the highway, I think folks are going into the park now for shorter durations. And I think we've seen some spillover to our businesses, both downtown, but then, Donahue's, Clam Castle, places like that. So I think those conversations with DEP are really important. I also think, kind of in light of that, we've also had some conversations. I know Noreen was in a meeting with DOT about some concerns that the towns had regarding pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure or lack thereof along Route 1 for folks that are going between Hammonasset and the businesses. Cohen's Bagels, Donahue's, Clam Castle, all those, Dunkin' Donuts. And I think we need to forge a little bit better partnership with DOT to try to find some solutions to those issues. There's a lot of opportunities. I could go on and on, but there's a lot of opportunities for partnerships with the state that I think that can be very successful. We're also participating now in a kind of a food scrap diversion conversation with, Katie Dykes at DEP is kind of spearheading, because we want to try to get to the forefront of some of these environmental initiatives, and food waste diversion is something that I've been interested in. I know the town's had some interest in the past. So I think there's ample opportunities if we can continue to forge those relationships.
That's great. The final priority that we listed out was to continue to promote the tax. Here it's called tax abatement policy that essentially defers additional increase in taxes on commercial buildings if a certain level of investment and growth is made in that property. This was, we discussed this briefly earlier in the meeting. We updated this policy. The initial policy, which is a couple years old at this point, needed some kind of details added to it, and we wanted to ensure that it was as user-friendly as possible. One of the things that we'll remind those in Hartford that's needed for those to take advantage of this policy is we don't currently have a way to for our legislative body in the town, which is our town meeting, to meet and take action on these policies. So that's something that we hope folks in Hartford continue to be aware of and perhaps address at some point, because it doesn't seem like it's going to be super soon that we're able to get 75 or more people in an auditorium together, or maybe for them to even be comfortable to do so. So is anyone else, before we move on to the questions, and I'll talk a little bit about the format of that in a moment, does anyone else have any additional priorities from the commission they want to bring up or touch on one of the ones we discussed?
The only one I would add is just transportation, but that's kind of covered in the questions, so.
Okay. So the way that we thought that we would do this, since we have there's four people to answer 3 questions, we thought that we would kind of rotate and give each person 3 minutes to address a question, and we'll rotate. I'm gonna who am I gonna put on the spot here? Jonathan, put you on the spot to come up with the random start. I don't know how you want to pick a random person to start, and then come up with a lineup, and then we'll just rotate. So everybody, well, not everybody, we don't have 4 questions, but people can go first, second, third, and fourth. So I'll while you figure that out, I'll mention the timing. Everyone will have 3 minutes. I'll time it. And Lisa has volunteered to ask the questions and clarify any of the questions, because Jonathan and Lisa wrote the questions, so they can clarify them for you. So Jonathan, I know I put you on the spot, but did you come up with an order?
So, yeah, maybe not so random, but how about if we did Noreen, Christine, John, and Joe, and that way we're kind of alternating different roles and not making
That
too
sounds
much of
great.
a cross
All right.
comparison.
So we'll start with that, and then can we loop them through so that someone? All right.
No, yes, of course.
Okay. Okay. So you said so Lisa, you got the order right? You wrote it down.
Yes.
Great.
It's in my head. I got it.
Okay.
And not everybody's going to get every question either, because we'll probably do 1 question for everybody, and then we'll do a second question and sort of split them off. Because we don't need to go. It'll be more engaging to do it that way, I think. So.
Okay, you're in charge. I am just the timer.
Okay. So the first question is going to go to everybody. So you've got your time to prepare while everybody got the questions ahead, correct? Okay. So one question that is going to everyone is the first question on the list. So the EDC has a mission to strengthen and diversify the tax base in Madison, including enticing corporate headquarters, optimizing real estate opportunities, and providing other incentives. So how would you propose we address the challenge in Connecticut to enticing to build up economic development, and in Madison, of course, in Madison specifically? So Noreen, we'll start with you.
Sure. I think I'm unmuted. Is that correct?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. I almost wasn't here. We lost our power tonight for about a half hour. And but I was quick. I had a lot of people offering me to come to their houses. Anyway, your first question, you know, one of the things as far as economic growth in Madison, it's always been an issue because, you know, when I was a selectman, we used to say there were 1,400 building lots left, that's all. And I know that 10 years has gone by and a lot of that has changed, and also the way we look at land has changed. But one of the things in your question was real estate opportunities. And I think obviously we're seeing it now with the pandemic, with the city flight, from people wanting to get out of the city and get away from elevators and large buildings. And we're being, you know, we're fortunate that that's really impacting our town, and we have to build on it. As I think Ryan said, we had met with DEEP, well actually DECD years ago, about property that belongs to DEEP, belongs to the state, but DEEP has control of it. And it's ripe for economic development. And we met with DECD, it was a great meeting. And I talked to the gentleman afterwards and he said, everything stopped when he brought DEEP in, because their thing is you don't ever sell any land. They think they're farmers and they hold on to everything. And when there's some of these small pieces could really build with some private pieces and really create something. I know that piece near the park would have been ideal for services that would have really serviced and enhanced what's offered at the park. But I think we have opportunities downtown. Years ago, when I was a selectman, we worked really hard and it wasn't an easy task. The railroad wanted to build their large railroad right where the old railroad was. And at the time I was a selectman. And we not only had to talk Amtrak into changing their mind, we had to find a place to put our school buses. And you can imagine that was not an easy feat. But it was an opportunity. And yeah, you most likely as EDC members know about the Bradley Vision Study. And I know it's difficult, but that encompassed so much of our downtown. And our vision was that Bradley Road would have a wastewater treatment plant, for the whole area. It would really be such a hub of restaurants, professional buildings. And we moved the railroad to the side so that we didn't prevent that from happening. And it's been discouraging to see that happen so piecemeal. There's an opportunity for transit development there. And I know the Davises were going to do something with their property. I sure hope it happens sooner than later. But enhancing something like Old Saybrook did, enhancing people living close to the tracks, being able to get on and off the railroad, the trains, and go into the city, go into New Haven. And it really would be a great weekend home getaway. Those were all the vision we had. And unfortunately, nothing really has happened with any of that. We also have an issue with North Madison. Is that my time? Oh, no, we wasn't North Madison.
That's the time on that question, Noreen. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, one more.
So Jonathan, who is next up? Christine?
Christine.
All right.
Thank
Hi,
you.
everybody. Thanks again for having us. I don't know that there's necessarily one magic door that, when unlocked, unleashes all the economic growth for the region. Even we just heard Noreen touching upon a couple of items that could really help, but I think there are several pieces in concert that can really create an environment right for development and expansion. I'm particularly partial and incredibly excited because I just brought out a piece of legislation last week that provides one of these pathways for growth for the state of Connecticut. In my role as vice chair of the Commerce Committee and Senate chair of the Environment Committee, I was in a unique position to lead a working group that made changes to the state's decades-old Transfer Act. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, it's pretty convoluted and confusing, to say the least. It's a decades-old law that was certainly well-intentioned at the time, with simultaneous goals of addressing environmental pollution and, of course, encouraging economic redevelopment and reuse of those properties. But what we found instead is that the cleanups for properties that fall into the Transfer Act can really be costly and cumbersome, oftentimes with properties who never had a spill end up within the confines of the law because of their proximity to another implicated facility. So rather than property cleanups being seen to fruition and transfers taking place, owners often abandon these properties for lack of practicable remediation methods due to the absence of these clear regulations, or maybe because they've become entangled in the red tape. As a result of all of this, we've seen more than 4,200 properties make their way into the Transfer Act, and only a quarter of those have seen their way out, which is an estimated, I mean, millions of dollars, 175 million in lost potential tax revenue from those sales. But because we passed this new law last week with really great bipartisan support in both chambers, we can really get commercial development moving again. And at the same time, we passed the sunset of that law and a movement towards a release-based remediation system for environmental spills. There's actually 134 of these sites in the district. So we're not immune to the Transfer Act here in the 12th. There's 12 of them in Madison, and they present an opportunity for these property owners now that wasn't attainable prior to last week. I'd say aside from that, I think it's really important to identify the fast-growing sectors and understand how that fits into the picture for Madison. I think Madison's done a terrific job of creating a vision and really sticking to that plan while growing its economic backbone, which is not an easy feat for small towns, as we know, to accomplish. There's always that threading of the needle to, between allowing the big commercial enterprises into an area and keeping that quaint small town feel. And I think the role of the EDCs and chambers of commerce is really critical in finding that right mix and helping businesses develop so that the town can be sustainably, economically vital and vibrant, as you said. So I think lastly, offering incentives. I think Madison is in a really remarkable position automatically to attract businesses and new homeowners because of its locale and sense of community. I'm of course partial as a business owner in Madison myself, but certainly the tax abatement policy is one that should be emulated elsewhere because it provides that cherry on top when folks are deciding about where they should go. I think the real challenge is my time up, Ryan?
It is.
Oh,
but
sorry. You're trying to.
I mean, you're promoting our tax policy, so
I mean, I could go on and on. I'm terrible at keeping time, so I should do.
No, it's fine.
And I have the volume kind of turned down on here because I was listening to my kids arguing in the background, so I'm turning it up now.
Jonathan, who was next?
John Michael Parker is next.
All right, great.
Thanks everybody for having us tonight. Thanks Noreen and Christine and Joe for also joining. So I think the first part of this question starts, of course, with a strong Economic Development Commission, which is really encouraging. You know, I think it's great that you folks have taken advantage of resources like STIRC, Advanced Connecticut. You know, when I was working on the Academy Community Center Development, you know, I had a firsthand experience of just how hard it can be as a volunteer in a group like this to get the significant work done that's going to actually help push things forward. So using resources like that is awesome. Strong partnerships with our town planner and our municipal government is really great. So just first wanted to say that and thank you folks for the hard work you do and the commitment you all volunteer into helping drive Connecticut's and Madison's economic development. You know, certainly that sort of connects right into something that was listed in the report, which is about community support for economic development. And so again, the project with the holiday lights is an awesome example and a way to, you know, make clear for people what this could look like. So continuing projects like that is going to be critical. And of course, helping sort of frame and tell the story through, as was discussed, you know, stuff in the newspaper, social media, ways of sharing the narrative of how we can actually do strong economic development in town. As Senator Cohen referenced a bit, and as of course has been talked about, the incentives, you know, Madison's tax abatement is critical. You know, how do we publicize that better through our chamber and regional chambers, you know, other statewide and regional economic development groups, you know, entrepreneurial networks, folks that would be interested and excited to jump at that. And then certainly, you know, statewide incentives and statewide programs, Small Business Exchange, Small Business Express, different programs that, you know, can help get funding to the businesses that need it to grow and become drivers of the workforce. I know we'll talk more about transportation, but of course, Tweed expansion, Shoreline East, another platform. You know, I want to go back to the workforce development a bit to say that if we can get more folks ready to take great jobs here in Connecticut, you know, and again, right here in our town, we'll have better growth. So, you know, a recent program, Skill Up Connecticut, that has made a big difference even during the pandemic, has given folks the opportunity to learn new skills in trades and, as we've discussed, these growing sectors. But I want to end by coming back to the idea that I think the most important thing we can do is to keep Madison's strengths. So great schools, you know, shoreline and green spaces, what the report refers to as our environmental assets, and a safe, strong community where families want to come with their children and invest. So that's how we're going to bring more new young folks to town that are going to be able to stay here and help grow our town. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. And last but not least, Jonathan, unless I'm wrong, Joe.
Correct.
Thanks for the opportunity. So when I got this question, one business immediately came to my mind, and that was the Pasquarello Electric Company, and I'm probably butchering the name of it, and I apologize. As an Italian, that should be embarrassing to me, but so I work in the utility business, and as I'm driving home from work one day, right on the way to my house, I see this building that had been vacant for my entire time that I've lived in Madison, starting to get some activity. And then I find out that it's this electric company. And they do a lot of electrician work and service work, and they assist the utility during storm restoration. That's how I got to know them. So when I saw this question, that immediately popped into my head. So I reached out to the owner. I said, hey, just out of curiosity, you've been here for a year. How's it going? How do you like it? And what was the push that made you move and come to Madison? And what he told me was that he is saving over $100,000 a year right now in taxes and insurance on his vehicles since leaving New Haven and coming to Madison. And I asked, is there anything else, any other reason? And he said, well, we got a good deal on the property, but also the cost savings in taxes and insurance. And so if you kind of take that and you think, okay, how many electricians does that employ now? If that gentleman is going to reinvest that money into his business, now he can grow his business just with the savings from coming to Madison and leaving the city. And I think that's a message that we can take not only to Hartford, but also market to cities and even beyond just New Haven, New London, our immediate Middletown, our immediate cities, but into New York City. And when you extrapolate that and you take it to Hartford, you could say, if it worked for this company moving from New Haven to Madison, maybe we could reduce the tax burden on our businesses across the state and create an environment where people actually want to come here, want to invest here, and want to grow their businesses here. I just simply believe that our state taxes and cost of living is too high. I think that's the impediment we have right now towards economic development, not just in our towns, but also in our state. I think that until we get that a little under control and provide some stability to businesses as well as towns, because towns need the stability from the state as well in the form of knowing what it is they're going to be getting in town aid, state aid. The same applies to businesses, knowing what they're going to be on the hook for in terms of taxes and regulations. The sooner we can provide stability to the business community, the more likely we are to get businesses to remain in state and to continue to invest and have new startups here. As it pertains to Madison specifically, about 6 months ago, I was informed about the shared waste system that you guys have that we have in downtown. We have a pretty unique gastro thing going on in Madison, which as a foodie, I like. We have Cohen's Bagels, which is a fantastic bagel shop. We've got the cheese shop. We've got specialty wine shops. We've got a specialty tea store. People don't know, but the folks who own that tea store, they go to all over the world to source these teas. We have a heck of a little hub here for the people who are foodies and things. And that situation we have with that shared septic in downtown is an impediment towards new businesses and restaurants opening up. And as you know, we do have Hammonasset. It's the jewel of the Connecticut shoreline. As people come in during the summer months, either for day trips or longer durations, to the extent that we can entice them to stick around later after the beach and enjoy some of these businesses, I think that that's another way that we can kind of revitalize the town. So in my opinion, if there was things that the legislators could do to improve economic development in Madison, I would focus on that shared wastewater situation, especially if there's going to be changes to the affordable housing, where we're going to have more multifamily and condos and things like that in town. Septics aren't going to work in that congestion, especially with a water table as high as it is down by the shoreline. So we have to start looking into realistic improvements we can make to our infrastructure in town. And I think that, along with reducing the tax burden across the board, will do a lot towards economic development here in Madison.
Thanks, Joe. All right, Lisa.
Okay, so the next two questions, we're just going to do the second question. How does the state keep small towns economically vital and vibrant? So, what's the role the state is playing in all of this is just going to go to Noreen and John. So who went first? I think Noreen went first.
John, Michael, and Noreen. I think Jonathan, who goes first? John Michael goes first this time? Yes.
Yeah, we'll reverse it.
John
Michael, you're up.
Thanks. And Lisa, just to confirm, this is the second question. How does the state keep small towns?
Got it.
Thank you. So I want to talk about setting my own timer too here so I can make sure I stay on track. Talking about three different things. First, the state needs to make sure it's holding up its end of the bargain with the critical supports that it offers to towns. So the first piece of this is economic cost sharing grant, ECS, and of course our special education funding, because those are huge burdens, both of those on the town, and making sure that we have some support from the state. Of course, we want to do that statewide in an equitable fashion, and I think the updated formula is getting us there. And so that's something that we should be demanding from Madison. As has been referenced, Hammond Asset, funding for Hammond Asset, of course. And, you know, related there, the state needs to be doing a great job of protecting our shoreline, you know, statewide environmental policies, which Senator Cohen has been a big part of, making sure that one of our most valuable resources is protected and able to continue being a driver of people coming into our town and, of course, economic development. The second piece here is, you know, a variety of other statewide programs that sort of proactively help invest in communities like ours. So again, referencing some work on the academy, you know, we got to talk to the folks at SHPO, State Historic Preservation Office, as was referenced before, the cultural arts opportunities. In my professional life, I'm the executive director of Arts for Learning Connecticut, which is a statewide nonprofit organization that provides arts and education to 175,000 students across Connecticut each year. And, you know, I've gotten to see some of the opportunities through state partnership and grant programs and ways to really connect and provide vital artistic and cultural resources into communities. You know, there's grant funding for things like the wastewater project that we talked about. Of course, we've referenced the idea of regional approaches that, again, the strategic action plan talked about. Something I want to bring up here in context of the statewide support is healthcare. You know, one of the biggest challenges that small businesses face is being able to provide healthcare and needing to offer that as an incentive to attract workers. It's something that I face in running my organization with my employees. And of course, on the other side, it's one of the biggest challenges that families face. So if the state can offer better healthcare coverage and programs for folks, it's going to make a big difference in all of our economic lives. You know, I'm going to, you know, wrap this up by just obviously connecting it to the moment we're in, facing COVID-19. The state has a huge role to continue playing in supporting all of the contact tracing and testing, the clear plan that we can actually follow and folks can make decisions based around. You know, I think Connecticut has done a pretty good job so far. I'm grateful for it. But unless we're able to continue providing those financial supports to individuals, to companies, to organizations, and advocating for federal funds, a lot of individuals and businesses are going to be hit hard again quite soon. And that sort of takes away all the progress we've made. I think I'm over my time, so I'll wrap up. Thanks.
Yes, let me actually just start where John Michael ended. I think when it comes to the pandemic and whatever the state is doing, will continue to do for safety for all of us going forward, helping us with reopening of our schools, all that is, I can't think of anything more important than the state does. I think part of the things that the state does do well for us, and I'd like to see expansion, is Shoreline East. I think Shoreline East is great, but wouldn't it be great to have that train on both sides? We've been trying to get that for years, so we can hop on and off all the time. Tweed Airport, we talked about it earlier. Expansion of that would definitely encourage people to start businesses here, people that could get in and out so quickly. We're pretty lucky with Hammond Asset, obviously, and that beautiful nature center. I think the state has provided, along with Friends of Hammond Asset, has provided all that for us. One of the things that somebody brought up, I think it was Matthew, about transportation. I think the state can do even more. We met with Nine-Town Transit, and I know they want to be in Madison more, but when we did a survey many years ago to see if we needed a senior center or a community center, obviously we wanted the answer to be we need a senior center or a community center, but the number one response from the seniors was we need transportation opportunities. And I think the senior center is doing a lot, but it's still not enough. And I think that has to be expanded so people know they can come and stay here all day and still get back to their other towns or the communities they live in. And then we talked about ECS. The state does provide education funding. And as the chair of Board of Finance reminds me, the bad news is we don't get much. The good news is we don't get much. So when they cut back, we don't feel it. But I had a long Zoom chat with their Commissioner of Education today. And what I don't think Madison's ever going to see the kind of support, financial support we used to see. We were getting 1.6 4 years ago. We're getting 300,000 now for ECS. I don't think those numbers, seeing what the state is dealing with, they're going to come back. But what I heard today that gave me a lot of hope is, I think this pandemic has made people in the State Department of Education look to be more innovative than they've ever been. Since we first started the Reform Act of Education, we had one size fits all. And I think the things they're talking about and the opportunities for schools, high-performing schools like Madison, lower-performing schools, school busing, flexibility with schedules, all the different things, the opportunities they're bringing, they're talking about. They're starting to finally have that conversation. I think the State Department of Ed has been kind of stuck in place for too long, and I was just very, very encouraged by what Commissioner Cardona was telling us today. And so I think those are things the state can do for us. And I think that's where they're going to help us to be vibrant the way we need to be.
Thank you, Noreen. Okay, so we've got one question left, and I'm passing that one to Joe and Christine. I think Joe goes first on this one.
Joe goes first. That is correct.
Joe goes first. So interestingly, this topic has already come up a lot in everybody's responses, but what's your vision for Connecticut as it pertains to infrastructure? And how does it directly relate to our EDC's priority list?
Okay. So you can't have a full discussion about infrastructure without comprehensive understanding of what it is that you're working with. In my line of work, I work in the construction business of the electric infrastructure of the state of Connecticut. In prior roles, when we have these initiatives where we need to go out and programmatically look at all of our assets we have. So as it pertains to the state of Connecticut, you could say bridges, roads, train bridges, etc. The first step should be having an engineering study done. I'm an engineer, I got to go that route, and determining what it is that, what it is we have, what our assets, what condition they're in, whether we're at repair, replace, and then our expected life that we have remaining on each asset. I would advocate for starting with that approach. Know what it is that we have, know what condition it's in, and know what we're looking at. From there, there's two separate issues. There's maintenance and replacement, and then there's expansion. We have 2 lanes on 95. I grew up in Waterbury. There was a big project when I was going to college where they took the 2 lanes and bumped them out to 3 or 4 lanes. That considerably helped with traffic and access into the Waterbury area from pretty much Waterbury all the way on up to Hartford. Is it time to look into that for the New Haven corridor? It's pretty much 2 lanes until you get into East Haven and toward closer to the bridge. And then the issue of trains always comes up as well. But it's not a complete story even there without looking into the history of how our state has spent our transportation funds. The money in the Special Transportation Fund has been used for non-transportation tasks for a while. Pay and benefits for DOT and DMV employees have been moved into that account. That should be in the general obligations budget. So we're pulling money from this fund we have set up that's supposed to be going for improving our transportation in the state. And it's being used for other things. And so I think step 1 is to understand what it is we have for an infrastructure. Step 2 is, do we need to expand or just maintain or replace like for like? And step 3 is, how do we then pay for it? It's great to say we want to expand all these transportation options, but we need to make sure that there's still people left in the state who can afford to live here when it's done. So I think that it's a responsible approach to make sure that any investments we're making into our transportation infrastructure is scaled out. We're getting the value for the money we've already invested into our assets. And then we have a realistic conversation with what we need. I truly think the paradigm of what work looks like is changing. My company, it was almost unheard of to work remotely. Most of us are working in some sort of modified schedule now, remote and in person. And I think if a company like mine would adapt to that, I could see more companies sticking with this. You know, hey, maybe we scale back on our office space. Maybe we can, you know, allow our people to work remotely and stay productive for a longer period of time. But that's more or less my view for transportation and how it would fit within the framework of Madison.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Oh, right on time.
That's a rarity, so mark that down.
All right, Christine, you're up.
Thanks, Lisa. Well, I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach to this just because we're in a unique situation right now. I think our biggest challenge, clearly, and we've talked about this a little bit, and you even mentioned, Ryan, that you had sort of taken another look at your priority list, right? In light of the COVID-19 pandemic. I think our biggest challenge right now is the pandemic. That's been my focus. Every single aspect of our lives has really been upended by COVID-19, and our businesses are really feeling that strain. I sat down with a bunch of businesses here on Monday, right in Madison, and there's serious concern over their short-term viability. I mean, folks are faced with how they're going to cover their overhead expenses, which in many cases have increased, and revenues have obviously either halted or significantly diminished for so many people. So I'm working very closely with our governor and Commissioner Lehman of the Department of Economic and Community Development to determine what state supports can be put in place. Many are in desperate need of grants or low interest loans, and we all found out this week that the federal government is not likely to do anything before Election Day, and I think many have been banking on that. So we have a somewhat of a crisis on our hands that we really need to address, and I appreciate that the EDC has sort of taken a look at that and trying to figure out, like with the movie theater. I've spoken with Arnold myself, and it's a real problem. So that needs to be the focus. We're going to need to work as a state and with our towns, EDCs and chambers to figure out how to put our heads together and make this work so that we're not left with empty buildings all over Connecticut. But I was looking over your priorities again, and my vision's in complete alignment. I think if I'm not mistaken, I'm probably, as I said, in this unique position here as the only candidate who's also a Madison business owner of 17 years. It gives me a lot of perspective on the town and its business climate, but particularly in the legislature, and helps inform my decisions, especially since I'm hearing from businesses all the time, likely because I am in fact a small business owner. But as I mentioned, I'm a member of the Tourism Caucus, or if I didn't mention it, I was thinking it as we were going through some of these questions. That very much ties into economic development and the vibrancy of our towns. I'm also the vice chair of the Commerce Committee, and as I said, the chair of the Environment Committee and Sit-Down Planning and Development. I know I've talked to Dave a few times about what we can do from a planning and development perspective with respect to some of the infrastructure in town. That's certainly a conversation that we need to continue to have. As Joe mentioned, transportation infrastructure is huge. We know that millennials are looking for ease of transport. They want to, get from point A to point B. I'm also the co-chair of the Bioscience Caucus. Bioscience in particular, one of those sectors that's seeing tremendous growth across the state, in particular in the 12th district, a great fit for companies coming into Madison, I think. Maybe a little partial there, but we're always hearing about how we have a terrific location between New York and Boston, but we need more. And, certainly Tweed New Haven would provide what we need to really attract some companies here. We hear that all the time, particularly with life sciences, though.
Thanks, Christine.
Sorry, I told you I'm terrible about this time thing. I have so much to say.
I know. And since we do have a few more minutes left, I promise everybody we'd be done by 8 o'clock. But we did have a couple more minutes. I wanted to ask just the commission members if anybody had any questions that they wanted to ask either the state senator or Representative Kokoruta or the two candidates. Eric, did you have something that you want to ask specifically as a follow-up to one of their responses?
Yeah, John Michael brought up insurance. So I wonder if we could, for a minute, what happens if if the Affordable Care Act is removed? Would any of you have any suggestions to make sure that the employees of all these small companies in Connecticut are insured? What would be our stance there? Anyone like to take that?
I'm happy to take a stab at that, Eric, only because in 2019, I introduced a piece of legislation that would provide a public option for business owners in the state of Connecticut. Even with the Affordable Care Act, we're really at a breaking point. I mean, I can attest to my own story of paying close to $1,600 a month in premiums and with a $16,000 deductible. So I was looking at a $35,000, payout before I ever saw a benefit. And people just can't afford that. So, it's definitely one of the biggest encumbrances to a business's bottom line. It's something that we need to get over the finish line in 2020, which obviously was abbreviated due to the pandemic. We, together with the insurance commissioner, the insurance committee, as well as the comptroller, who I worked very closely with, wanted to launch the Connecticut plan. And I would have hoped for widespread bipartisan support on that plan. And I hope that a new legislature in 2021 will see that back, so that we do have protections in place in Connecticut and are providing affordable health insurance options and ultimately affordable health care for our businesses.
May I just add to that too? Talking to businesses in town, and I don't know, Eric, if you have done this, but so many of them couldn't afford their premiums with the plan, with the Affordable Care Act. They just couldn't afford it. So we needed to find an alternative for them. And I think increasing competitions, I do worry that Connecticut is leaning to the point where we're going to take over all insurance and we're going to sort of put an industry out of business. I hope that doesn't happen. I wouldn't support it. I think we used to be the insurance capital of the world, but we need to really work together. We were talking to a group yesterday. I can't remember what day, but we talked about just being partners with businesses and really working together. And if there's competition, it would drive the price down, but it's got to be done. Businesses can't be threatened waiting for somebody to pull the rug out. So I think just the consistency of doing something, making a decision, and working with the industry, the insurance industry, as partners to provide the best care we can, the best policies affordable for the citizens of Connecticut should be our goal.
Thanks, Noreen. And also, I should have mentioned at the beginning too, everybody will get one minute to respond. Actually, Christine and Noreen, you were both exactly on 1 minute. Very impressive.
Wow.
Good work. But John Michael or Joe, if you also wanted to respond to that, we'll give you 1 minute each if you choose.
Sure. I'm really, was really excited about the Connecticut option and appreciate Senator Cohen's work on that, and would be excited to help be a part of that legislation. To the question about the Affordable Care Act, thankfully, we passed a bill in Connecticut to protect 10 essential health benefits. And so there are some protections that we will maintain here. But broadly speaking, the idea of 20 million people across the country, and certainly many people in Connecticut being kicked off their insurance without the ACA, is really terrifying and needs to be a top priority. So I think a public option in Connecticut, an option that will give folks access to buy into a broader plan that will keep costs down, managed by a competent comptroller and other people in the state, I think is going to be a really strong option. And it's what a lot of businesses and municipalities already see and benefit from. So why shouldn't we expand that? So that's what I'll say.
1 minute also.
It won't take me that long. I'll just say that I echo Noreen's sentiments on this, that I wouldn't want to see an entire industry, especially the one that our state's been known for years, be put out of business. I would like to see more options in terms of that. And I think introducing more competition into the marketplace, allowing insurance companies to compete across state lines, allowing folks to tailor their health insurance to their needs rather than having insurance policies conform to different mandates. You must cover this, you must cover this. I think the more competition we can inject into the marketplace and the more options we can give people, the more choice people have. And I think that's a good way to go. But I do think that the pre-existing condition clause is something that has to be dealt with. If the Affordable Care Act was ever to be repealed, that's something that's a problem that needs to be solved. So,
thanks, Joe. Any other follow-up questions?
Yeah, I had one, Ryan. I forget, I think maybe it was Joe who mentioned earlier, just that in general, the nature of work is changing. Even before COVID-19, right? I mean, this has been And I actually invest in software companies in this area. And so we've seen this for years. I guess just a question to all of you. I mean, as you look into your crystal ball, kind of, 2, 5, 10 years from now, right? What kind of advice, suggestions would you have both at a state level and for Madison specifically, as far as like how we should be thinking about recruiting businesses compared to the traditional model, as we think about infrastructure and some of these other topics we've been talking about?
Is it cool if I hop in first, seeing as it was a comment I made? Okay. I'm rather liking the format of this, that it's not at all like what we saw on TV the last couple of debates. So, and I appreciate that. So to kind of elaborate on that, my uncle is in the twilight of his career. He owns a small business up in Durham, Middlefield area. And they've had this building for their environmental business for, I think, 25, 27 years. And they just sold it because they're in a position now where they're saying, well, we've been working remotely and successfully for so long now. Why are we carrying this overhead for this building? And what they did was they found a smaller office space with a little garage space to hold their materials and equipment in a more like a strip mall type setting on the back of one. So they were downsizing their office because they're finding that the technology and the cloud computing has allowed them to work remotely. From a Madison perspective, if I don't have to commute into New York City and I can have this, why would I not want this? And I think that might be the message is, hey, listen, if you want to get out of the city, you want to live by the shore in Connecticut with great schools, space for yourself and your family, access to the outdoors, quality, top-notch education, come on here. And you can still get to New York City. You can still get access, even with, Tweed, the issues with Tweed. LaGuardia is still an hour and 10 away. You still have access to the city and all that, everywhere you can go in the world, basically from there. So, I do believe that as time progresses, if I had a crystal ball, I don't think any 4 of us would be here right now. But nonetheless, I just see the nature of work changing. My neighbor moved from Texas. She still has her job in Texas. It's a different world now. And you're not necessarily tethered to your location as you used to have to be. And we can start to market towards these cities and even farther away places. Send us your businesses. And, we don't have a whole lot of commercial real estate.
All right.
But maybe we don't need that as much anymore.
Thanks,
as we.
Joe. Well,
sorry, I'm sorry.
No, appreciate that. Who's next?
May I just, let me just add, I think we all know that things have changed and they're going to continue to change. Ryan, you were bringing up the Wall Street and the software company on Wall Street. They still don't have a date to go back into that building. And you start to wonder, and their business is thriving and doing great. So you wonder, really, that's a big taxpayer in Connecticut. In Madison, are they going to need that building in the future? One of the things I do like around town is you see everybody outside. You see people outside. We've been trying to get outside dining in Madison for 25 years. And part of it was the wastewater, but we have fought it. Restaurants have left town because of it. And I think, too, we have to start rethinking. People are going to be working at home, and we have to start rethinking our houses. What our house is going to look like. Do we need these accessory buildings in order to, maybe work from home, to educate our kids from home, have our elderly parents live with us so we don't have to worry about them being in a nursing home with all the nightmares. So I think the way we live, and certainly our businesses, things definitely have changed, and the transportation needs are going to change too, because people aren't going into major cities to work, I don't think, anymore, for a long time at least.
Okay. Thanks, Noreen. All right, and Christine, you get to wrap it up.
Sure, and well, John Michael also, I think, hasn't gone yet, right?
Oh.
But I'm happy to go first, and then if that's okay with you, John Michael. Okay, you're on mute anyway. But what I would say is I think those are good points. I think, things are certainly changing for some sectors. So I think, you asked Matt about what, how Madison should really plan for that. I think the advice is to look to the strong industries that are really growing to fill, the spaces that may be vacated because other industries aren't needing that space anymore. So, I mentioned bioscience, life sciences in particular. I think we're going to see, those companies need space. They're bursting at the seams. They're looking to grow, and they like being in these small communities. They like being where there's quality of life. Madison has the school systems. Madison has the proximity to the water, the beaches, the trails, everything. I mean, really, it's a fantastic town. Again, might be a little bit biased, but I think we really need to start looking to those industries that are growing rapidly and still require the space, and then look at what the shift requires for the folks that are going to reorganize and maybe be operating remotely. What do they need from us? What sort of support systems can we provide to them? So I'm guessing I'm at a minute. By your nod, Ryan.
Yes, you're right. Well, yeah, I give you the visual. And now, not last, but definitely not least. Sorry, John Michael.
That's Ryan. It's the tie. It's still throwing you off, I think. So I'll add something new to the conversation and then go back to an earlier comment and important note. So in terms of infrastructure, supporting high-speed internet, ultra high-speed internet, programs like the Connecticut Gig Project, making sure that we have the resources to support these new industries that are reliant on really great connection right here in town and at home. That's going to be a critical piece of the infrastructure development. And then in terms of the looking ahead, I want to go back to what Dave was talking about with thinking about affordable housing. So this is, a direction where the state is clearly heading, thinking about diversifying our towns, making sure that all folks can afford to come here and grow our community and live thriving lives. That's going to look like, additional affordable housing. And so let's embrace that, which I know we're doing. Think about how we do that in a smart way that really pushes us in the direction that everybody in this community, the values that we all share, because I think that's going to be an important thing on the horizon. And if we jump into it in the right way, right up front, I think it's going to set us up for success.
Great. Well, I want to thank the candidates and also thank you to our state elected officials for making time to spend with us tonight, even though we're not able to be together. Appreciate all of your hard work during a session that was not typical. I hope that this is an opportunity to continue your interaction and communication with the Madison EDC. So for those of you that are lucky enough to go to Hartford next session, I hope that you will come back and spend some time with us as our priorities continue to evolve, and we're certainly gonna need your help.
Thanks so much, Ryan. I really appreciate it. Thanks everybody from the EDC.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
So I'm gonna call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion.
All in favor? All right. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.